Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and I am here with our resident expert in all things naval history, Drachinifel.
Hello.
And what are we building today for the Battleship League?
We're going to build HMS Vanguard, the last battleship ever laid down, although interestingly enough, not actually the last one to enter service.
What was the last one to enter service then?
Jean Bar,
Oh,
because
of
she started construction before World War II started,
yeah.
but thanks to this minor issue known as the German occupation of most and then all of France, she wasn't actually completed until well after World War II.
Okay, that's very interesting. Um, and was so Vanguard was started after the Lions.
hmm
But was she started after the Lions were cancelled, or was she started before they were cancelled?
The design work started well before they were cancelled,
Mm-hmm.
and in theory, well, actually, in theory, the work on her did start before the Lions were completely cancelled
Mm-hmm.
as well, because the problem that the British had been facing was that they knew they needed a lot more capital ships because it was beginning to look increasingly in the 1930s like they might end up having to fight a European and a Pacific war at the same time, which was somewhat prescient of them, although they hadn't quite guessed how bad it was going to be. They thought they might fight Italy or Germany
Yeah.
and Japan. They obviously ended up, and of course with France on their side, they ended up fighting Japan, Germany, and Italy with no France. So
Yeah.
didn't quite work out to plan, but nonetheless, because of the cutbacks in shipbuilding and the various associated industries in the interwar period, they were looking at building the battle fleet up again, except that they ran into this slight issue, which was they could only manufacture enough guns and enough armor plate to build two battleships a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the King George V's were laid down in pairs to start with. And then the Lions were also being laid down in pairs. So you have Lion and Temeraire, and then Thunderer and Conqueror, and then whatever the last ones would have been.
Yeah.
But they realized this building rate wasn't going to cut it if they had to build a battle fleet that was going to be large enough. So they were investing at the end of the 1930s quite heavily in basically growing the armor and gun making and engine making facilities, etc., back up to not necessarily the same scale they were in World War One, but to a relatively decent scale wherein they could build more capital ships.
Makes sense.
As it turned out, by the time they're looking at the very end of the 1930s, they'd managed to get armor manufacture up to the point where they could build 3 capital ships a year.
It's progress.
But gun manufacture was lagging a little bit behind. Plus, they were having problems with developing the 16-inch gun for the Lions, and so they thought, well, if we can build everything but the guns, and we need more capital ships, well, we happen to have this bunch of 15-inch turrets lying around, mostly taken off of Courageous and Glorious back in the day. So how about we build a ship and use those guns?
Yeah, makes sense, really. You know, make do with what you actually have to
Yeah.
hand and get something that you can actually use, although they didn't end up getting to use it. But
No.
nearly. And if the war had,
Yeah.
and if the war had gone on longer, she would have presumably served in the Pacific against Japan.
Yeah, well, she could have entered the war and fought against Japan in the Pacific anyway, based on her Kiel laydown date. The problem was that initially construction was paused, as was all capital ship construction. Then it was resumed again. Then it was paused again because they needed to divert resources and particularly manpower. They prioritized, in Vanguard's particular case, the building of the carrier Indefatigable over the construction of Vanguard. And then they took the opportunity to redesign elements, radar and anti-aircraft armament and so forth. And so there was this whole long series of delays. Whereas if they had actually gone, you know what, any capital ship's better than none, and just gone full tilt from keel laying, she probably would have been in service maybe late 1943, certainly early 44.
That would have been an interesting alternate kind of timeline if she was available that, and during the sort of midpoint of the war. Anyway, we should probably get to the building, because otherwise, I mean, I'm fascinated. But so what was her displacement? And again, for those who've been watching this, we know that we're going with full load for this.
Yes, so full load displacement is about 51,500 tons. She's like a lot of the late cap battleships, like Iowa, etc., where ostensibly is designed for 45-ish thousand tons. Actually ends up being considerably heavier than that. Once she's fully loaded, at least.
Okay. And what was her design speed?
Design speed was 30 knots.
Okay. Shouldn't be a problem. And then what about her bulkheads? Was she a heavily subdivided ship, or was she kind of regular for the time?
She was pretty heavily subdivided. The British were taking defence quite seriously, so I'd probably go with one down from maximum, so many.
Okay. We'll leave beam and draft. I think that those are fine, and we'll have a regular crew and presumably standard crew quarters. Or...
Yes. Yeah, pretty standard.
Yeah, okay. And then shall we get the towers chosen? And this is where things might get interesting. So we basically have 4 variants of the same tower that are very KG5 style ones, I think. So that's the 1, and then I think the 2, it's very similar, as is the 3, and then that's the 4.
So 2, 3, and 4 are very similar.
Yeah, and I think 1 is the same as well. Maybe I'm going blind. So I think it would be how close the little secondary barbette comes to the edge of the ship.
So what happens with 3 and 4?
So 3, you kind of have a very narrow gap. You could maybe squeeze past if you were not minding the spray, and then the 4 goes right to the edge.
Right. Okay. Because that little the mini barbette is going to be where we have the second of the 5.25s. So I'd actually go with the 4.
Okay.
Because on the photos of Vanguard, the barbettes do pretty much go right up to the edge.
Okay.
I mean, the bridge structure isn't a perfect replica, but as you say, this is more of a kind of renowned King George V superstructure.
Not that viewers saw it, but we were chatting about the hull itself, and this has an incorrect stern. So,
Vanguard had a transom stern historically. I mean, there's other little details like the masts. For Vanguard, the masts are the wrong way round. That they are sort of mini tripods, but the 2 supporting arms should be forward with the main arm back.
Yeah, this way.
Yeah, so we know it's not perfect, and also obviously if you look at the back of this superstructure, it's got the KGV style aircraft hangars, whereas Vanguard was designed without aircraft. So
speaking of, we have basically have 2 tower types, and we can adjust the size. We've got a quite compact one, which also has the barbette on it. And then we have a much larger one with the aircraft launch rail and recovery arms and things.
So I think we want the large one, not because of the aircraft bit, but as it's got here, they've kind of put boats on it. And if you look at Vanguard, she does still have that gap amidships between the 2 funnels, but it's used for boats. So as long as that pretty much
boat deck.
It's close enough for government work at that point. And then we've got the 2 barbettes there for the 5.25s.
And like the forward ones, do they go like right up to the edge of the ship?
Yeah.
Okay, we should probably use the large tower 3 in that case.
Yeah.
All right. What about funnels? How many?
So we want 2 funnels, and if they've got a version with kind of a raked back funnel cap, that would be great.
No, they all look completely flat.
Vertical.
Yeah. Again,
oh, well.
we're basically trying to build her on with the KG5 parts because the developers have not added Vanguard parts. Hey, developers, add HMS Vanguard parts, please. Yeah. Really, the only choice.
Whichever one we've got that can fit in the front.
Okay, so I think we can fit all of them on the front.
Okay.
So it'd be really a choice between if we want the kind of balcony style, straight up and down, or one with, I guess that's a observation platform or something like that, built in around the funnel.
We want them basically as clean as we can get them.
Okay, that'll be the tall funnel 9 then. So one here and one kind of here.
If you put that one as close as back as you can. Yeah, kind of there-ish. Like again, because the superstructure's not perfect, but on Vanguard, you've kind of got the boat deck, and then you've got a pair of fairly high-standing fire control directors, which are kind of forward of the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that, maybe if we can bring that funnel just a fraction forward, maybe one dot forward.
Yeah, like that.
There you go. Yeah, because again, the masts should be... Actually, no, that mast is the right way around. So yeah, that's about right.
Just to be confusing.
Yeah, so we're basically, I think at this point we're building kind of 1939 spec Vanguard probably, rather than the final iteration that she would have.
Well, that kind of fits because I mean it is supposed to be a World War II battleship league, so maybe we are building her as if she was aimed to be in service in 1943-44, which is I think really fine. So 15-inch guns then. Oh, I've got it in metric. Sorry, that's because I'm doing a campaign at the moment, and part of the challenge is to be in metric. But I'll switch it back to the default. So 15-inch dual turrets guns. Okay.
Yeah. Now this is going to be interesting with the whole design, because can we get a top down?
Sure. I'll just go stop my dog from barking.
Okay.
I think it started recording. It has. Good. Oh, yeah. I've placated the dog. So,
so if we can get an overhead shot, and zoom out a bit, because I'm just interested. Okay, so because sort of the grey area forward, where the breakwater is, again, it's not quite the same. Vanguard's breakwater is pretty much triangular and sweeps right back. But trying to approximate that onto this hull, I think if we want to move the guns a little further forward, there, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, and then then obviously we stick a super firing set just behind them.
Something like that. Was there a little lip, or was it just flush?
Well, I think this is because historically it'll be the World War I style turrets, which are a lot smaller.
And these are using the...
So I think we're going to have to use a bigger barbette, because otherwise that looks silly.
Yeah, I agree. The enlarged will probably be fine. Yeah, enlarged looks okay.
Yeah, and then we drag the superstructure forward. And then we're basically just repeating that arrangement in mirror form at the back.
Something like that?
Yeah, I mean, this is very, very kind of KGV Lion 1939 hull, because Vanguard was considerably longer than that. Because if you look at historical photos of Vanguard, there's almost as much space between the stern and the barrels of the aftmost guns as there is between the bow and the start of the foremost guns.
Okay.
So yeah, she looks a little unbalanced. I mean, we do actually have an afterweight offset there, so I think maybe we could how much more forward can we bring the forward guns and just shift everything forward a little?
Yeah, should be doable. I mean, the limit would be to put them like way up here.
Let's go with the last. Let's go with the last dot and shift
dot.
everything that way. See what happens.
Oops! Oh, I hate it when it does that.
Oh, it links everything.
Yeah, only when you don't want it to, of course. We could probably get away with shifting it like, because it will change again when I. It's a little bit of a forward weight offset, but
That's a little bit more balanced. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, it's certainly something. It's kind of, my eyes are going, the layout is Vanguard, but it's not Vanguard.
I know.
But we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, another thing that would be brilliant is obviously the game is saying we have to use the Mark IV 15-inch model. It would be lovely if you could say, oh, you're going to use the Mark IV, but I just want to change the appearance to the classic ones. But what about secondary weapons?
So we have twin 5.25-inch.
Now,
so
0.25 is going to be a little tricky, but we could call it 0.3. So one
and
there
then
and one there.
Yeah, and then one immediately forward and one immediately aft.
Okay.
So it's actually one of the first times we've actually been able to perfectly replicate the secondaries. Even if, again, they're using the circular KGV 5.25 mounts rather than the octagonal Vanguard mounts.
Yeah, I haven't seen any octagonal ones. That would be really cool to get those.
Yeah,
to get those in. And then,
but again, as you said, they haven't brought Vanguard parts into the game, so
no, they haven't.
Oh well.
What about? Presumably, she had a lot of AA guns, but were they?
Yes.
So we've got the 2 and the 3-inch guns that we can use to represent them.
Now she had a single twin 40mm Bofors and a few singles, but again, something which I don't think is probably in the game is the vast majority of her armament was made up of sextuple 40mm Bofor mount. So I don't think there's a 6-barrel version in the game, is there?
No, sadly not. The Russians get a 4-barreled version, but yeah, that. So if I go to millimeters and then -11, there you go, 40mm.
Yeah. So well, let's just stick with twins then for the.
Okay. Twin.
And just everywhere, basically.
Just everywhere.
Except for the boat deck, obviously.
Yeah. Oh,
everywhere we can find on the superstructure. And a few on the stern for a good measure, if we can, if there's any space for them.
Yeah, that one. On the stern.
Oh no, I was going to say right. No, that's going to because we don't have the length of stern here, so never mind about those. Then.
Okay, it's given her 17 twin AA guns, which is
better than nothing. But again, secondaries don't really matter too much in this, so
no,
whatever.
They really shouldn't make any difference. They haven't done so far in any of the battles, really. Shall we get their lengths, their barrel lengths, right? Because again, their actual kind of performance doesn't matter, so we might as well have the historical length. So the
5.25, and that is barrel length is 50 cal.
Okay, it should be doable. Yep, there we go.
Okay,
and the Bofors. If it even gives you it in calibers, because
I think it's the L60. So
60. It's going to be tricky. No, it can only get up to 47, but you can use your imaginations.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll come back to the main guns when we actually look at that. Okay, what about her propulsion systems? What was she equipped with?
Right, so it's oil fire. Oil 3, because along with the US, she's got access to basically whatever oil she wants. Balanced, geared, whatever the maximum geared turbine is, 2. I'm still going to go with Orcs 2.
Yep.
Shaft, kind of Shaft 3. We've kind of gone with Shaft 3 most of the time. Semi-balanced rudder's fine. Electro Hydro 2. She's got the latest and greatest steering systems. All right, so she's going to be one of the few ships that gets Krupp 5.
Lucky her.
Barbette, well, Barbette's 13 inches. I'd go with about 4.
Yeah.
Anti-torp. Now, what's the anti-torp systems?
So it's single, double, triple, quadruple, and then 5. It just says extends from the side to the bottom of the hull. That's really all the description you get in terms of what they actually are.
Right, so she has a triple layer system, but also with a with sort of a small torpedo bulkhead inboard.
Right.
So, because what's on a PSC in the fifth system? I'll go with 3.
Okay.
Double hull,
Double
obviously.
hulls. Presumably she had watertight doors.
Yeah.
Flooding.
Flood 3, actually, she had a because her final variant came after the sinking Prince of Wales and Repulse.
Yeah.
They stuck a ton of extra pumps and anti-flood measures in.
Makes sense. And
she's all or nothing.
All or nothing. Okay. And then presumably an increased
increased
AP, base fuse,
yep.
HE shell. We found that we've had to end up going with the best shells anyway. But we might change that later. Standard shell size. She didn't have extra big shells.
No super heavies.
Was she one of the ships with superchargers, or am I remembering that completely wrong?
Yeah. No, she's basically there are two sets of British ships in World War II and World War II period that have superchargers. You have the 15-inch arm ships where their elevation is limited to 20 degrees, which basically means anything that's not Warspite, QE, Valiant, Renown, or Hood. Everyone else theoretically has access to superchargers. And then when it comes to Vanguard, people love to argue about whether or not Vanguard would have had superchargers, because she didn't carry them historically, but she went out in peacetime. And there's the Nelson 2 Vanguard, the book by D.K. Brown, who was from the Royal Navy Department of Constructors, and actually started work with the Royal Navy when Vanguard was still in service. So he had, when he was writing his books, he had access to far more records than pretty much any of us. Yeah. And he specifically states repeatedly in 2 or 3 different books and articles that Vanguard's gun mounts, although they could elevate to 30 degrees, they were also strengthened to be able to use supercharges in addition to the 30-degree elevation, despite not obviously being issued with them because barrel wear issues during peacetime. So I tend to side with the guy who had access to all the plans over random people on the internet.
I think that's fair enough, really, isn't it?
So, we're going to be going with her with supercharged versions.
So, given that will... So what they did, they gave her more muzzle velocity, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, so basically every naval gun in service, they have the standard charge that you fire to get the shell to go X distance, but that is a certain percentage down from what they calculated the maximum safe amount to use is. Yeah. Because, of course, that will cause more wear and tear on the guns. And if it's the maximum safe amount, then, the slightest manufacturing flaw in the gun or the slightest, surplus in the charge could render it unsafe. So they always leave a margin of safety in, whereas the superchargers were basically how close to that maximum can we get without actually blowing everything up.
In that case, I think we'll probably be between tube powder 3 and triple base, but I think triple base would represent that a bit better because it gives you a little boost to shell muzzle velocity, and it's not as safe as the tube powder. So we might have to change that when we get
well, we'll see what penetration values we get.
But we'll leave it on that for now, and then presumably...
And then we'll give a picric acid 3, I think. Yeah.
And then, oops, Daisy, didn't mean to do that. What turret mechanism did she carry?
Or what rotational speed have we got at the moment?
They're currently doing just under 4 degrees a second.
So that's actually a little bit faster than historical for rotation. So we can leave it as is.
Leave them on electrical 1. Okay. And then we'll have a look at reload. But what was their rate of fire?
So rate of fire is, in theory, going to be... What's it? There. Scroll. Around about 2 rounds a minute. So 1 round every 30 seconds.
I think we can get that with an auto 1. Yeah. 2.03 rounds a minute.
Yeah. So that's about
also 1.
And then, well, now we have to adjust for penetration. Sure. Which is going to be fun.
So, where's my calculator gone? So, what range would you like to look at?
Now, this is the annoying thing, because obviously all those ranges are in meters, but of course, being a British ship, all the calculated values are in yards. However, with that said, we can... Because the problem is, again, there is armor-piercing value data for the World War II era shells at various ranges in yards. There's muzzle velocity and then velocity at point of impact data for that particular set, normal charges, World War II shells. Then there's range and muzzle and striking velocity data for the superchargers, but not the corresponding armor penetration calculations. But, kind of rule of thumbing it a little bit, when you look at the striking velocity of the World War II shell with standard charges and compare that to the World War II shell with supercharges, the striking velocity is almost, but not quite, the equivalent of dropping 5,000 yards off the range. I'd say, eyeballing it, it's probably equivalent of dropping about 4,000 yards off the range.
Okay. And
since 4,000 yards is, about 3,700, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 meters, then I think if we can actually use probably, I'd say, the 15,000 meter, or possibly even the 20. Well, we've been using 20,000 meters thus far, so let's use 20,000 meters.
Okay.
Because if we use 20,000 meters as our range, then looking at the armor penetration table with World War II era shells, we can walk that back by 3,500 to 4,000 yards, roughly speaking, to get the armor penetration values that we're actually likely to encounter.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. So normally we would look at the 20,000 meters, which is currently...
Yeah, so we're gonna be looking at what the 20,000 meter value is in the game, but I'm going to be using the armor penetration table data from about 3,000 to 4,000 yards closer,
which
to represent what it should be with superchargers.
Gotcha. And for those watching, you'll hope, I can't mouse over it, but currently at 20,000 meters we have 29.8 inches of penetration, but that is against what the game considers base armor, and if we look at the armor quality of this ship, it's 148. Some are 152 or thereabouts. So you divide by 2.5 to get the value we want. So currently at 20,000 meters, we'd be going through just under 12 inches of actual
so we need
armor.
We need to dial it up to about between 14 and 14 and a half by my estimation.
So 14 times 2.5. So that's about 35 to 36 that we're looking for. So the 20,000 meter number. Okay, well, we could swap to TNT shell. That usually helps a little bit. Yeah, that gets us up to 33.6, which, if we convert it back, is 13 inches of pen.
And then we can just about maybe tip the make them 55 cal guns.
Yeah, we can do that. 55 caliber, and then we're up to 36 inches of pen effective.
Spot on.
Yeah, divide by 2.5, and we get 14.4 inch.
Yeah, so that's pretty much rough. Yeah, that's roughly speaking exact what we want.
Yeah. The only problem is our rate of fire is now down to 1.78. So
that's not terrible. I mean, that's I'd say we leave it at that, because two rounds a minute is 2 rounds a minute is kind of optimal. 1.78. It's not that far off. We've only lost maybe 5-6 seconds, and let's face it, despite our very best efforts with poor old Yamato, she's got a little bit of a slow rate of fire.
I know, poor old Yamato. Yeah, and this is the way Dreadnoughts works. Of course, is it will fire at that rate of fire all day.
Yes, absolutely.
So it being slightly lower than what the ship could achieve in trials is perfectly valid. I think so. In that case, what did she have to actually make the guns hit? So what kind of range finder did she have?
She's got Coincidence 5, got Last Generation Opticals, just Hydro 3. There's not submarines and stuff. She's got RDF and Gen 3 radar. Her radar suite was very, very advanced. In fact, the funny thing, there's always a funny story about that, is when she was taken out for trials in the late 40s, and she went for her first full-scale gun trials. Mysteriously, for some reason that no one can determine, the Royal Navy set up a Bismarck-sized target at the exact range of the opening engagement of opening salvos of the Battle of Denmark Strait for her to shoot at.
I wonder why.
Yeah, which she promptly nailed with her first salvo.
Very nice.
So it was like, I think they were proving a point.
Right, and then I suppose we just need to look at her armor scheme.
Yes. So protection-wise, now she has this very interesting protection scheme because they wanted her to be this little bit faster and so forth. She's not quite as heavily protected as KGV. Her main belt is 14 inches thick. But it's 40, and this is the thing, game limitation. It's 14 inches thick historically over the magazines, and 13 inches over the machinery.
Yeah,
so
we
can only have one.
Yeah, we tend to use the magazine.
Yeah, magazine belt.
Yeah,
and that's fair for everything that's got variable. So forward and aft belt is 2 inches actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just the way they did it. Right, so deck is again maximum over the magazines 6 inches of deck armor.
Okay.
With 2.5 inches over the bow, and believe it or not, I'd say probably overall 2.5 inches at the stern. She actually has 4.5 over the steering gear, but that doesn't make up the majority of the stern, so we'll go with that. Wonderfully, she has no conning tower because conning towers are dumb.
Right. Well, conning tower armor is incredibly light.
We'll still take it down to like 3 inches or something.
Okay, no problem. And then the superstructure?
Just splinter proof. We've very much left it as is, haven't we? For 1.5 or everyone else.
And then, did she have any layering to her armor, or was it just kind of the bulkheads?
1.5 deck, basically.
I use the usual trick.
Yeah.
Something
The
like that.
funny thing is, yeah. And then there is actually a small degree of inner belt,
Okay.
which was again put in near the magazines for splinter protection, which is 1.5. But that's actually pretty much what we were. That's about the minimum. So
There you go.
it's pretty much this as we've done with all the other ships, just
Yeah.
the minimum possible. Otherwise,
Makes sense. And then what about her turret?
the 13-inch on the face and 6 inches on the roof.
And the barbette?
13 inches.
Okay. And the 5.25s?
2.5 with 6-inch barbettes.
Okay. And then no armor for the
2.5.
Okay. But
5.25.
On the roof?
It's 2.5 all round.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I missaid. 2.5.
Yeah.
Like that?
No, sorry, the barbettes were 6.
Oh, game won't let me.
Okay, fair enough.
Game's like, no,
yeah.
can't have that. That would be
Fair
too
enough.
sensible. Well, I think that's
coming pretty well. In fact, she's even coming slightly underweight for her
actually.
standard displacement. Mind you, range actually, which is going to gain even a bit more range because her historic range is 15,000,
which would be almost a minimum. But yeah, we could put it down to 17,000 ish. Cruising speed, the game is saying is 20.5. According to the way we've built her, I don't know how that compares, but she's
cruising speed. A lot of it is just set by how fast you want to get somewhere versus the fuel economy. So,
I know, yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty good. I don't think there's anything that we've missed to add on.
No.
But yeah, she's just ending up a little bit,
She's very well balanced.
Underweight. Yeah, she is actually, surprisingly so. Well, should we see what she looks like underway? Obviously, doesn't look quite right, but
no.
I mean, it's overall
it's distinct enough. You look at it, it's like I think if someone saw it, they'd ask, "Is that supposed to be Vanguard?" It's like, whereas with Yamato, you can very definitely tell exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it's close enough that someone will probably guess vaguely right. But as we said, there's no transom stern hull. There's no modernized old school 15-inch turrets. There's no superstructure or funnels Vanguard style or Vanguard style octagonal 5.25. So we've done the best with what we can, although as we said earlier in the video, there's maybe something approximating what she might have looked like had she been built straight through from when she was laid down.
Yeah, just
a little bit more KGV like.
Yeah, and it would certainly be a plausible scenario that they didn't pause the construction one or other of the times, or both times, and we're just like, no, get it into service.
Exactly.
Take KG5 as dual turret style. Just put 15-inch gun in it and get it in service now. I'm very interested to see how she does. And thank you very much for joining me. And we'll see you again soon for the next vessel, which might end up being 3 vessels, depending on how it goes. Because we just have the Americans to build. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you again soon for some more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Bye for now.
See you then. Bye.